So YouTube, we're going to do a little play Starfleet Battles, or learn to play Starfleet Battles, a very short game. I've got a little board set up here on my desk. I'll be rearranging the video camera here in just a second, so I'll be pointing at the map for most of the game. So I'm going to just do that. Now we could be using larger counters on a bigger hex map like that, but the standard counters that you're going to get for the game are actually much smaller. So we'll try doing this on the regular sized map first. Those are the megahex counters versus the regular sized counters. If we need to zoom in on this, I'll just pop out the camera and drop it down and get a closer look as we need. Hopefully that doesn't make anybody seasick. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be playing a Gorn battle cruiser up against Federation heavy command cruiser. The Fed's already 2 point values greater than the Gorn, so its drones are just going to be standard Speed 8 drones. Now these are the SSDs, Starship data sheets. They have all the information concerning the ship that you're flying. They've got the charts for the weapons, photons, type 1 phasers, type 3 phasers. It's got the ammunition racks for your drones. It's got your anti-drone table. It's got the information for your ship, movement cost, HET cost, how much power it has, turn mode, crew, number of shuttles, the hit points for those shuttles, and if you get into using them later in the game, boarding parties, T-bombs, probes, that sort of thing. The Gorn ship is similar. Type 1 phasers, type 3 phasers, standard charts, shuttles, and it's got plasma torpedoes instead of photon torpedoes. I'm running the map just into VLC from the video camera, and just got a graphic here of the energy allocation form. I'll use the one on the screen here for Federation, and I'll just use one on a grease sheet on the map. For the Gorn. So this is a little learn to play Starfleet Battles. It's a game that is sold by Amarillo Design Bureau. You can find that at starfleetgames.com. Let's see if we can rotate this around for you so it's upside right. Okay, so energy allocation for the Gorn. Okay, we have 30 warp engines. Or do we have 32? Okay, these are tournament ships, so it's going to be 30. Normally outside tournament would be 32. Impulse engine 4. 2 here, 2 here, and APR 2 here and 2 here for another 4. So we have 38 power. These are tournament ships. They have 5 batteries. So we have a block of 4 of them here, and there's 1 battery up here. Now we start allocating the ship. So on Tournament cruisers, life support is 1, active fire control is 1. That's actually found right on your data sheet. Okay. A bit carried away. I'm using the energy allocation sheet for the tournament ship, but I'm actually using the Gorn battle cruiser. So it is 32 warp, and it's going to be 2 APR, not 4 APR. So let me just make that change. It's still 38 power, and I believe the batteries are fewer. But 2 batteries for 4. Yeah, 4 batteries instead of 5. So we're not using this ship. We're using this ship. So I just made a few changes to the form. 32, 4, 2 for 38, 4 battery. And as I was saying, life support, active fire control costs are right here. Life support is 1. Shield cost is 1 plus 1 for 2. That's 1 plus 1 because if you only put 1 point in, you're at what we call minimal shield level, which means you only have 5 boxes. If those 5 boxes are destroyed and you later try and pay for full shielding for 2 points, well, those 5 shields were the entire shield was destroyed. That means you've lost all 30 boxes. So it's not standard that people would pay 1 point. They're going to pay the full 2. Okay, so let's go back to the sheet. Okay, now Gorn has plasma torpedoes. He's got 2 S's and 2 F's. The S's are A and B. Now an S torpedo is 2 plus 2 plus 4. That's 2 to hold. So we're going to come in hot. So we're going to be holding 2 S torps. Plasma F torpedoes are 1 plus 1 plus 3, and they are free to hold. So we're just going to put a dash to indicate that we're holding the 2 F torps. We don't have these 2 lines for our ship. Shields are 2 points. Now we're coming in hot, so we can have 2 special shuttles already armed and held. So we're going to hold 2 suicide shuttles. Now, suicide shuttles to arm over 3 turns are up to 3, up to 3, up to 3. And whatever that equals, double that is your damage. And to hold that, it's just 1 point. So we have 2 suicides for 1 each. And we immediately begin arming 2 more specials if we want. So let's start arming wild weasels. Wild weasels are a distraction weapon. Those are 1 plus 1 and a delay roll of 1, or hold to 1 to hold. No big difference there. And the ship doesn't have a cloaking device. So let's add up how much power we've used so far. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we've got 38 available, we've used 12. We've got 26 still available. So let's put a good 6 points into reinforcement on the number 1 shield, and we'll go speed 20. So total power used, 38. Phaser capacitors charged. Well, let's take a look at our phasers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 phaser 1s. And 2 phaser 3s. So that's 9 power. It takes 1 point to arm a type 1, half a point to arm a phaser 3, and we're coming in already armed. So we have a phaser capacitor of 9. Now let's energy allocate the Federation. So that's going to be our energy allocation form for the Fed. And the Federation SSD. Okay, so we have 32 warp. Impulse engines. We have 2 plus 2 for 4. It's already written down over here for us. Now, this has got refits, so it's not atomic power reactors, they're atomic warp reactors. We have 2 of those. Number of batteries is 5. Life support is 1. Active fire control is 1. Activating shields is 2. We have 4 heavy weapons, A through D. So we don't have E and F. Now with the Fed, you can come in holding 2 overloaded photons. The arming for photon is 4 plus 4 for an overload, for a maximum overload. For a standard or for proximity, it's 2 plus 2. These are 1 to hold, and these are 2 to hold. Now we can come in assuming 2 points per tube. So to have them fully armed as a maximum overload, it's going to be 4 per tube. It's 2 plus 2 for a standard, and it's also 2 plus 2 for proximity. If you arm it as proximity, you usually indicate with a little X that it's for prox. We're not going to be using electronic warfare for now. You come in holding 2 special shuttles, so let's put 2 here. So these are 2 suicides. And he's got 4 shuttles on the Fed. Yeah. Let's do the same thing here. Arm 2 wild weasels. Now what are our phaser capacitors? Well, we got 2 phaser 3s for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's see. Phaser capacitors. Yeah, this particular sheet, or this style of sheet, doesn't have lines for that. But we'll create it. So let's just put a line here. So phaser capacitors at start is 11. Okay, so how much power have we used so far? 2, 4. 16 is 20. 24 out of 38 available. So let's go 14. So net power for allocation is 38. We didn't do any tricks with batteries, so it's still 5. And we're allocated there. Now we could be assigning boarding parties for guard assignments. We could also be plotting mid-turn speed changes, but we're not going to use those rules for this little demonstration. So our ships that we have for speeds, we have a speed 20 Gorn, and we have a speed 14 Fed. Now what we're using here is a 32 impulse speed chart. This is a PDF, so I can't mark on it. But the Fed's going speed 20. Sorry, the Fed's going speed 14, the Gorn's going speed 20. And as we call out these impulses, each impulse will consist of several stages. And those stages are typically movement, tractor, launch, transporter, and fire. Now there's more stages than that, but this is the general breakdown. For instance, under launching, there's stages specifically for launching shuttles, landing shuttles, launching plasmas, launching drones, etc. But for our quick little session here, we're not going to need to get into that kind of specific detail. It's just going to be a quick little game. So this is basically how the game is called. It's on that 32 impulse chart. So we take our ships, put them in the starting positions. Typically it's 1701 and 2530, but I'm just going to put them pretty close here just to do a quick little fast game. And what happens is the controller would call out what moves. So on the first impulse, nothing moves, and then you go through those stages. Movement, tractor, launch, transporter, fire. If anybody has any actions, they do them on the call. Next impulse, the Fed doesn't move, but the Gorn does. Next impulse, the Fed moves, but the Gorn doesn't. Next impulse, the Fed doesn't move, the Gorn does. Well, let's look at our range. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Range 13. Our phasers are in the 9 to 15 bracket, so we have a 50% chance of hitting. We're doing 3, 2, and 1 damage if we roll 1, 2, and 3. So a quick way you can look at this, you can do 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 6, divided by 6. So roughly at this range, for every phaser you're going to fire, you're going to do roughly 1 point of damage, statistically. You could get lucky, you could fire 6 phasers and roll 6 1s and do 18 points of damage, but it's not very likely. Your chances of doing damage on the dice rolls increase the closer you get. With the Federation photons, overloaded photons cannot do anything outside of range 8. Not do range 8 and under to hit. Standard photons cannot hit at range 0 or 1, but they can hit all the way out to range 30. And they, standards, will do 8 points of damage. But you notice this line for proximities cannot do anything close range, but they've got very good rolls to hit at 9 to 12 and 13 to 30. And they will do 4 points of damage, but only at ranges from 9 to 30. So if you got a fleet of Federation ships, they may very well want to come in when they're at range 45 from their target with proximities armed. When they get to range 30 or so, fire off proximities and then start arming standard photons or overloaded photons as they close. Okay, so at this range, the Gorn is going to launch a plasma torpedo. Now there is a chart that you can use for keeping track of this stuff. These are what are called play aids. So this is an S torpedo. We'll make it real. You don't announce if it's real or fake or pseudo, but you have to keep track of whether or not it is or not. The target of this is the counter CA3. This is impulse 4. Impulse 4. Of turn 1. Now, the Gorn ship has got 2 S torpedoes. It's got an A and a B. Now, this is left portion, and that's right portion, LP, RP, and your diagrams for that are right here. So with the current positioning, the Fed here and the Gorn here, left portion would be like this in this section, and right portion would be like this, inclusive. So both of those tubes arc on the Fed currently. So we're just going to pick a tube. So let's make it tube A. So tube A. The launching unit is Gorn BC4. And the counter is counter CO. And it is a 30-point warhead because it's an S torpedo. Let's make that a little bit darker. There we go. You get a little section here for tracking damage that has been done to the plasma. And you get a little line over here for notes. You get a similar type of play aid for drones. And you had another type of play aid for shuttles. So on our ships, both the Fed and the Gorn have both got a suicide shuttle armed. So when it comes time to launch those shuttles are admin shuttles. They are armed as suicide. And when you launch it, you fill in the rest of the information. Okay, so let's go to the next impulse. The Fed moves. The Gorn moves. The Gorn's going to turn. So we grab a turn marker. And place it on the map. Now the plasmas are on the board as well. They move speed 32, so they move every impulse. Now the Federation has its own seeking weapons. They're drones. Now as we said, they're only speed 8 because the Fed is already 2 points more expensive than the Gorn. Now the Fed could purchase speed 12 drones, speed 20 drones, speed 32 drones, but those cost battle points. And when the game is over, you determine the win-loss ratio for the game, and those extra purchases will count against the Fed. So the Fed right now is only carrying speed 8 drones. So the Fed's going to launch 2 drones. So we've placed the counter on the map. We're going to go to the next impulse. Oh, forgot. The Fed just launched 2 drones. Now the drone racks can launch 1 drone per turn, per rack. Now, the Fed's special shuttle could have also been a scatter pack. Basically, it's a shuttle with 6 drones attached to the shuttle. They get launched, they wait a minimum of 8 impulses, and then they can release their drones. For this particular game, we didn't do that. But it's an option. So next impulse, the 6th impulse, nothing moves except for the plasma. 7th impulse, Fed moves. The Gorn moves. Now the Gorn is doing the side slip. The next movement after side slip must be forward or turn, but since the Gorn has just turned, he has to complete his turn mode before he can turn again. So we look at the Gorn ship, which is traveling at speed 20, so it's the 18 to 24 bracket. His turn mode is 5. So the Gorn turned here. He's gone once, he's gone twice. That means he's got to go 3 more times before he can turn again. Now since he just slipped, the only movement he can do is directly forward, unless he wishes to perform something called a high energy turn, which he would have had to pay for during energy allocation. And we look at the sheet, HET cost right here for Gorn is 5. Now during energy allocation, the Gorn could have drained 4 of his batteries and used those 4 points for arming plasmas or paying for life support active fire control shields, and recharged his batteries with warp power and allocated 1 point of power of warp directly to the HET line, so that in an emergency he could have drained those 4 batteries, applied it to the HET line, and performed a high energy turn as needed. We didn't do that. I'm just explaining that's how it would work. Now on the map, a high energy turn can be up to 360 degrees. So basically it allows him to turn in whichever facing direction he wants when he performs it. There is a little diagram on the map over here with facings right up here. So if the shuttle or the ship were in this hex right in the middle, the number 1 shield would be facing A, the number 3 shield would be facing C, the number 5 shield would be facing E, etc. So as you notice, on the SSD itself, there are 6 shields. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6. So that's 1 shield per hex map facing. Okay, so next impulse. The speed 8 drones of the Fed move. The Gorn moves. And the plasmas move. Next impulse, just the plasmas. 10th impulse, Fed, Gorn, plasmas. Next impulse, nothing moves except for the plasmas. Now, the Federation earned 2 shuttles as wild weasels, but in order to use those shuttles as a weasel, the ship must be going speed 4 or under. Now the ship is going speed 14. If we were using mid-turn speed changes, the ship could have plotted various speed changes to drop its speed. You can drop your speed down by 10 or by half, whichever is greater. When you are increasing your speed, you can double your speed, or up by 10, whichever is greater. So if there were mid-turn speed changes plotted, speed 14 could drop from 14 down to 4. But since we're not using mid-turn speed changes for this game for simplicity, his only other way of getting down to speed 4 or under would be to declare something called an emergency deceleration. You can declare this on the movement stage of any impulse. The next 2 impulses, your ship moves at its current speed, and on the impulse after that, it's at speed 0. And on that impulse, it could launch a wild weasel. Wild weasel is a distraction weapon, sort of like similar to chaff, or in submarine movies when they release a little canister bubbling of air to distract and make noise, distract oncoming torpedoes. It's the same type of theory. Basically, the shuttle emits a strong warp signature matching that of the ship, while the ship has reduced its signature output. Anyway, next impulse, the 12th impulse, the drones move. The Federation moves. The Gorn moves. The Gorn has gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. His turn mode is complete. I could remove this off the map, but I'll leave it. The plasma is now range 1, 2, 3 to the Fed. Next impulse, the Gorn moves. The Gorn turns. And I'll put another turn marker on the map. And the plasmas move. Now, if we look at the movement sheet, we are about to call impulse 14. So on impulse 14, speed 14s will move, as will the plasma. So, since the range is 2 between the Fed and the plasma, if we were to go to next impulse, the Fed would move or turn, and the plasma would go. If the Fed wanted to go forward, the plasma would hit the Fed and damage him on movement phase, denying the Fed the ability to try and shoot the plasma with its phasers. So if the Fed wants to go forward next impulse, now would be the time that he would want to fire at the plasma, unless he's turning. He can't sideslip because he just sideslipped. Because every time he sideslipped, the next movement must be forward or turn. Now, if he hadn't sideslipped, he would be here. In which case, next movement, he could sideslip out, away from the plasma could turn, and then he would have an opportunity to fire at it at range 1. Yeah, so with this impulse, what does the Fed want to do? Movement, tractor, launch, transport, or fire. Does he want to fire at the plasmas? He'll decline. Next impulse, Fed moves, and the plasma moves. So the Fed, if he moves forward, will get hit, so he decides instead to turn. And the plasmas could try and go here to hit his weak shield, or he can turn here to try and hit the forward battle shields. The photon torpedoes on a Fed are FA, which is the front arc out on the ship. It's out this hex row, and in between. So here, all the way around to here. So there, all the way to here. That's the front arc. Now, if we were playing a game where mid-turn speed change were allowed, the Fed could declare a mid-turn speed change, drain some power from batteries, and speed up. So going here for the plasma wouldn't be that good of an idea, because the very next impulse the Fed could move, and it's another movement on the plasma's count. So normally it would move here. Now, because we know that mid-turns aren't being used, we're going to move it forward to here. Now at this point, the Fed doesn't know whether or not this plasma is real or fake. So he may want to fire as many phasers into the plasma as possible, but that means that's fewer phasers he can fire at the Gorn. So it's a 24-point shield. This plasma was launched on impulse 4. It is now impulse 14. It's gone 10. So if we look at the warhead strength, it's a 30-point warhead. Up to the first 10 movements. On the 11th, it drops down to 22. So the shield strength on the number 5 is 24. So we know already that that plasma is not going to penetrate the shield. So the Fed is going to take the chance that it might be fake. But he's still going to mitigate the damage a little bit. He's going to fire 2 phaser 3s. These phaser 3s here are 360 degrees. And there's a chart for doing that. Basically, those phaser 3s are number 9 and 10. So it's number 9 and 10. Target is plasma. Turn 1. Impulse 14. And the counter is CO. So I'm just going to write CO over here. Now on this sheet, we've got seeking weapons, target, heavy weapons, target, phasers, target, turn, impulse. So I'm putting 9, 10 at the plasma CO, and it's happening on turn 1, impulse 14. And we're going to roll 2 dice. So that's a 4 and a 6 at range 1. So let's look at our chart. At range 1, a 4 does 4 damage, and a 6 does 3. That's 7 damage.
So that's 3.5 damage to the warhead. Phaser fire applied to a plasma torpedo is always cut in half. So 3.5.
Okay, so that was movement, tractor, launch, transporter, fire. We just did fire, rolled the damage. Next impulse. The Gorn moves. And the plasma hits. So at this point, the Gorn player would reveal to the Fed what he has written down, that it was real when it was launched. So this is impulse 16, or sorry, impulse 15 movement. So 15 minus those 10 movements. So it launched on the 4th, it moved on the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and the 15th. So we actually look at that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 movements. And if we look at 11 movements on the warhead of an S-type plasma, that's 22 damage. Now,
we did 3.5 damage to the warhead. Now the half point is thrown away, so it's 22 minus 3 is 19 damage to the shield.
And we scratch them all off.
So we have 7 more to go, but the Fed
has 5 batteries. So let's say that we use 5 points of that. And we reinforce our shield with it. So 5, and I'm going to put a little B for battery. So that 18 minus 5 is 13. Oops, I accidentally clicked out of my pencil. There we go. So the Fed has a half damage number 5 shield. Okay, 16th impulse. Speed 8 drones move. Federation moves. Gorn moves. And the plasmas have already hit their target, so they get removed off the board. Now the game we're playing here is with a fixed map. So if the Gorn hits the edge of the map, it'll take 5 damage and stop moving. Normally you'd be playing with a floating map. So you would just move all the hexes, or all the counters back the number of hexes that gives the Gorn the amount of room it needs. So if it needed another 10 hexes, you'd move all the counters back 10. Or if you've got a map where you've got the sections cut out, you would just place another section for the pieces to move on to. Okay, 17th impulse, nothing moves. The Gorn on this impulse is going to launch another plasma. If we look at the Gorn, we have already launched a tube. So the A tube here is on this side of the ship on the map. The B tube is right portion. Well, right portion would be right down this row, but it's just on the wrong side, of the Fed. The Fed is just outside the arc, so that right portion plasma cannot arc. However, the F torpedo is right side, so that does arc. So now the plasma F can arc in 3 directions when it launches, so that's the best direction. If we grab a sheet, this can be either a real or a fake. It's an F torpedo. This is impulse 17, turn 1. Counter is number 6. The launching unit is BC4. And the tube is tube D as in Delta. It is a 20-point warhead. And the target is CA3. So the Gorn player would then put that sheet down so nobody can see it, and they would continue on. Next impulse the Gorn moves, and the plasma moves. So let's just move the plasma. Now, if I keep slipping out like that, the Fed will continue to be outside of that arc. So instead of side slipping that way, I'm going to side slip this way. Now, if we look at the count, the Gorn turned in this hex. Went 1, 2, 3, 4. But if those two side slips weren't there and we wanted to count, it would look like it only went 1, 2, 3. So you should always leave your side slips on the map with your turn markers. It's usually a good idea to have two pointed turn markers and at least 2 side slip markers. That way, if your opponent challenges your ability to turn on that movement, you can more easily show him where your movement was and verify that yes, you are able to turn. But on the Gorn's turn mode here, it's a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. He still has one more to go. But we have now changed the fact of the S-torpedo B-tube now arcs. So if we look at the line for right portion, the Fed is within that hex. So if we look at right portion here on the SSD, you'll notice that it follows that shield line. You also notice these 3 little lines with the arrows. Those are the directions in which the plasma could launch. So on this map, this hex line is the right portion divider. So it's from here to here and in between. That's right portion. So if we follow the line, the Fed is able to be hit. So on the 18th impulse, the Gorn is launching another plasma. Is launched to B, as in beta, and the counter is AO, as a 30-point warhead. So here we are indicating that it is a fake plasma. It's a pseudo. Now, that's not announced, it's hidden, but it's recorded. The other plasmas were real, this one's a fake. Okay, next impulse. The Fed moves and the plasma moves. Fed just turned. Plasma moves. Plasma moves. Next impulse. The drones move. The Gorn moves. And the plasmas move. Now, the movement of the drones for the Fed is betting that the Gorn is going to turn this way. Or he was. But now that this plasma's here, he's not sure. So, instead of going forward like that, he's going to turn this way. Now, the target of the drones must remain within the FA arc. And it is, on all its movements. Okay, 21st impulse. Fed moves, Gorn moves. Oops, I forgot to move my Gorn last turn, so let's back that up. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a 5. Now on this impulse, the Fed moves, and the Gorn moves, and the Plasma moves. So, which way does the Gorn want to go? Does he want to go this way, or does he want to go this way? On a fixed map, if he turns, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this hex here does have a number, so it's a playable hex. So he can turn and continue going this way. So if this were one hex farther down this way, he would not be able to turn without hitting the wall or the edge of the map. But since he is able to do it, now we're going to grab the turn marker and place it. Now you notice it looks like it's, if you just count from the turn markers, it looks 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you follow the side slips, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's why it's sometimes really important to leave 2 side slip markers on the map. Okay, what's the range? Range 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Next impulse, just Plasma's move. Third impulse, Fed, Gorn, turn mode of the Fed. At 14, turn mode is 4. One, 2, 3, 4. So on this impulse, the Fed could turn. The Fed knows that the Gorn is turned down, so he's going to turn in. Next impulse, the drones move. The Gorn moves. And the Plasmas move. Now, the first F-torp was launched from tube D on the Gorn. And tube D is the right-hand side. And the right-hand side is over here. So the Gorn has another plasma that he can launch. And he's going to do that. So this is impulse 24. Turn 1. This is tube C. Launching unit BC4. This is counter CO. It is a 20-point warhead. There's an F-torp. Target, CA3, the Fed. For instance, the notes down here, CA3, you could write Fed if you wanted to. Now we have to mark down whether it's real or fake. So the first one was real, it hit. This one, we know it's real, the Fed doesn't. This one is a fake, the Fed doesn't know that. And this one, we're going to make it real. Now, next impulse. Nothing moves except for the plasmas. If we remove it here, which we could, the impulse after that, we know the Fed moves. You can move here or just move forward. So we're no longer hitting the front shields, we will be hitting the back shield. So we are going to if we go here, the Fed has the ability to side slip, which means the plasma would have to HET, but it wouldn't hit him. So it's kind of a bad situation for the Gorn plasmas. But if the Fed side slips out instead of going straight forward, it opens up the range a bit as the Gorn's sliding by. So we're going to go in front. And then the S-torp moves. And this one moves. Next impulse, the 26th impulse. The Fed moves, the Gorn moves. And the Fed is going to take the side slip. And the plasma is going to go here. Because the Fed just slipped, he must go forward. And he's turned and only gone 2. This plasma could go here because it's trying to get the target within its FA. It could not go here because it's opening the range. Or it can HET. But plasmas don't move when they HET, unlike a ship. So we're going to HET, and we're going to face in this direction. Now, the Fed's number 5 is damaged. The Fed's number 5 is on this side. If he goes forward, the plasma might hit it, depending on the movement chart. But unfortunately here, the Fed does not move next impulse. So doing that in that direction doesn't really help. Now the next movement, the plasma could turn, but there's no real reason to HET it facing this direction, so we're just going to face it that way. Now in this impulse, the Fed knows he's not moving next impulse, and there's 2 plasmas there. He's got an S-torp off his number 1, which is his primary battle shield. He's got an F-torp off the side shield, which isn't the primary battle shield, but it is a battle shield. He's already fired off 2 phaser 3s. Does he want to fire into the S-torp off the number 1, or the F-torp off his number 6? The shield not facing the enemy right now. The Fed's more concerned about his number 1. He's guessing that it's a real torpedo. So he'll fire some phasers at it. Now, it's a 30-point warhead. And that plasma was launched on impulse 18. This is impulse 26, which means it's going to be hitting within the first 10. And the reason that's important is that an S-torp within the first 10 is 30 points of damage. That's enough to take out the entire shield. So, what's the damage for phaser 1 at range 1? Well, if you add this up, this is 32 divided by 6. That's roughly about 8 per phaser. And then you cut that in half. So that's 4 points off the warhead per phaser 1, roughly. So if we look at the number of phasers that will fire, 4, 8, 12, 16. And that's if we roll average. We might roll badly. Phaser 3s are shot. You got 2 phaser 1s here. So let's fire 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 phaser 1s at the S-torp. So that's literally phasers 1 through 6, 1-6 at plasma. And it's the S-torp, so we're just going to write S-torp over here. And it's AO. This is impulse 1, or sorry, turn 1, impulse 26. Now, the impulse matters here because it's within the last 8. of the turn. This last 8. Any phasers fired within this last 8 are going to have a cooldown period before they can be fired again next turn. And it's an 8 impulse cool. So these are being fired on the 26th, which means they won't be able to fire again until the 3rd impulse. That's why it's important to write down the impulse of when you fire your weapons. Okay, so we had 6 phasers being fired into the S-Torp. And we've got pretty awesome rolls for the Fed. So that's 8 plus 14 for 22, plus another 8 for 30, and a 4 for 32. But that gets cut in half because it's a plasma that's being shot. So that's 16 off the warhead. Now the Fed could have also fired at the F-Torp with these phasers and these phasers, but it's going to be hitting a really strong shield, and he wants to hold back some phasers for the Gorn. So he's not firing anything there. The range on the map between the Gorn and the Fed at this point is range 11. Next impulse, only the plasmas move. At this point, the Fed finds out that this S-Torp is fake. It does no damage. This F-Torp is real. It hits the number 6. It is the plasma that was launched on impulse 17, and it hit on the 27th. So it's gone 10 movements. So 10 movements on an F-Torp means it's a 15-point warhead. Coming off of a 30 shield. And that plasma is removed from play. So that means there's only one plasma still on the board in play for the Gorn. It's the real one that is an F-Torp. And it is B-tube on the Gorn that is still armed. B-tube, however, is on the right-hand side. That's this side here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Gorn's got one more foot to go, and then it can either go this way, or it can go this way. So let's see what happens. Next impulse, the Fed moves, and the Gorn moves. Plasma moves, and the Gorn is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the drones move after the target does. This is 28th impulse. 29th impulse, just the Gorn and the plasmas. So what does the Gorn do at this point? Does he turn this way? Or does he turn this way? If he turns this way, he gets his plasma to come to bear. If he turns this way, that plasma doesn't arc. So, the Gorn's going to turn this way. 30th impulse, the Fed moves. The Gorn doesn't. Plasma does. 31st impulse, the Gorn moves. And the plasma does. The Gorn at this point is going to launch another plasma. B-tube, impulse 131, real, S-torp, AO, 30-point warhead. The strength of the warhead is always announced, but whether or not it's real or fake is not. The target is not announced either, but it's pretty obvious who the target is, since there's only one enemy ship. So that was the 31st impulse. What's the range? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Next impulse. The drones move. The Gorn is now going in this direction, so the Fed drones are going to go this way. The Fed moves. The plasmas move. And the Gorn moves. This is the last impulse. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 to the Gorn. The Gorn's going to hold its phaser fire. There is a plasma, counter CO, which is a 20-point warhead, launched on the 24th. It is now the 32nd. It'll hit after it's gone 9 moves. So an F-torp on 9 moves is 15 points off the Fed's number 1. The Fed has 4 phaser 1s it can fire. So each phaser will do roughly 4 off the warhead. So if he fires all 4, that's 16 points. It's probably going to overkill it. So let's fire 2 more phaser 1s. And that'll be number 7 and number 8. So 7, 8 at plasma, 1, 32. And it is counter CO, F-torp. A 4 and a 5 at range 1. That's 8 points, 4 off the warhead. Now at this point, it's energy reallocation time. That was the last impulse of the first turn. So here is the Fed's energy allocation sheet. The Fed's got some battle damage, but no internals. So it's still going to be a total 38 power available. Still same life support, active fire control, and shields. Is holding for his torps are now 2 points. So that's a bracket and a 2. I usually use a bracket to indicate holding. He still has the 2 suicides, and he has 2 weasels. Now at this point, the Fed out of the 11 has fired everything except for 2. So phaser capacitors used out of the 11 was 9, which means there's 2 out of the 11 still there. So if we want to rearm phasers, we need to put a 9 for all of them if we want to arm all of them. And since we just gained 2, 4, 6, 8 points from the photons, no longer chewing that power down, that's what we're going to do. So let's see how much we've used so far. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, so 25. So out of the 38 we've used 25, which means we've got 13 left. Okay, the Gorn. No damage to it. So it still has 38. Gorn didn't drain any power. Night fire control ice support didn't fire any phasers, but it did launch all 4 plasmas. So he needs to start arming. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we have 24 still available. So we're going to reduce the speed to 14. Now let's make that 12. And we're going to put 12 reinforcement on the number 2. Okay, so we have a 13 Fed. We have a speed 12 Gorn. And we have a speed 8 drone and speed 32 plasmas. So, second turn, impulse 1, movement, the plasma hits. Tractor, launch, transporter, fire. So, that CO was a 20-point warhead. The number of movements is reduced it to 15, and it took 4 points of damage from phaser fire. So it's an 11-point warhead. So, Fed takes 11. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That counter gets removed from play. Next impulse. Nothing moves except for plasma. I forgot to move this on the first impulse. So second impulse, plasma moves. Just to double verify that, that was launched on the 31st from here. 32nd, 1st, 2nd. Nothing else moves. Fourth impulse. Gorn moves. The Gorn can turn. 1, 2, 3. Let's verify that. 12, turn mode of 3. So by slowing down, the Gorn's able to turn. Because you dropped its turn mark from a 5 to 3. So there's your point of turn for the Gorn. And the Fed moves. Now the Fed has damage to his left side. And that's his left side over here. So if he turns, he's exposing that left side to the Gorn. So instead of turning, he's going to try and keep that away by either side slipping or going forward. Well, he's also got a slightly damaged number 1, so he's just going to go forward. But let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he's got 2 more that he wants to close. So instead of forward, he's going to side slip. And the plasma moves, of course. On the fourth impulse, the drones move, and the plasmas move. Fifth impulse, the Fed moves, and the plasma moves. Sixth impulse, the Gorn moves, and the plasma moves. Now this is an AO counter, and that is a 30-pointer, and it was launched on the 31st. It's only moved 7, so it's still full 30 points. Now, the Fed did fire some phasers on the 32nd, number 7 and 8, so those aren't available, even though we recharged them. Phasers 1 to 6 were fired on the 26th, so they are available. So he's got quite a few phasers available, except for number 7 and 8. Now, does the Fed plan on exposing his number 1 to the Gorn? No, but it's still a primary battle shield. He'd prefer to keep his phasers for shooting the Gorn, so at this point he needs to make a decision. Take the shield damage and save the phasers for shooting the Fed, or the Gorn, or does the Fed take those phasers and instead shoot them at the plasma to mitigate the damage on his number 1? Well, the Fed's got 4 photon torpedoes that he's planning on firing at the Gorn this turn. So the question is how badly damaged does he want his shields to be? How much damage does he think he can do to the Gorn? Well, if he looks at his shield, he's got a 21 shield. So he wants to take at least 10 off the torpedo. At least. 4 points per phaser. He's going to fire 2 phaser 1s and 2 phaser 3s. So on turn 2, impulse 6, he's going to fire 9, 10. So it's 9, 10, 5, and 6. Phaser 3s. Phaser 1s. Phaser 1s did 14. That's 7 off the warhead. And he did 8 for 4 more. So, minus 11 off the warhead. Next impulse. Nothing moves except for the plasma. So AO hits. As we know, AO is real. So that's a 30 minus 11 is 19. So we have 2 points left on the shield. Range is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Next impulse, the drones move. The Gorn moves. The Gorn is going to move up with a turn to bring that reinforced shield towards the Fed, and the Fed is going to slip it. Next impulse, nothing moves. Next impulse, the Fed moves. Next impulse, the Gorn moves. Next impulse, the drones move. Next impulse, the Fed moves range 5. If we look at the Fed's chart, photons, 1 to 3 at range 5, he'd like 3 to 4 for 1 to 4, or 2 for 5. But in order to get the 2, he'll have to expose his number 1, so he's going to be settling for the 3 to 4 range. So, next impulse, Gorn moves. One, 2, 3, 4. That's where the Fed gets his range 4. Now, this is a guessing game at this point for the Fed. Does he want to try and shoot the number 3 shield of the Gorn by waiting for the Gorn to get up enough and then turning in? They're moving the same speed, so there's a very good chance he'll do that. But then again, there's also a very good chance that the Gorn is going to turn towards and in. So does the Fed fire? Well, I know where the reinforcement is. So let's do a random roll here. One to 2, he'll fire now. 3 to 4, he'll hold. 5 and 6, he'll I was going to say fire half, but let's say 1 to 3, he fires now. So he's going to hold. Next impulse, just the Gorn. Gorn slips out. Fed now has 1, 2, 3, 4, range 5. He didn't want that. Next impulse, drones move. Sorry, that wasn't supposed to be the Gorn move, that was supposed to be the Fed to move. Now it's the Gorn moves. 16th impulse. Next impulse, nothing moves. 17th impulse, just the Fed. If the Fed turns, his number 1 is not towards the Gorn, and he gets range 1, 2, 3, 4. He might side slip and get range 3, so he'll hold. Next impulse, the Gorn moves. But the Gorn wants to keep the reinforced shield towards. So he's going to turn in. Fed now has range 1, 2, 3. Does the Fed hold or continue to close? The Fed would prefer the 1 to 5 rolls at range 2. He'll wait. The Gorn is shooting a fresh number 2 shield. He'll hold. Next impulse, the Fed moves and the drones move. The Fed, if he goes here, gets his 2 shot. If the Fed goes here, he gets his 2 shot. Both are good, but if he goes here, the Gorn has an opportunity to slip onto his number 1, which the Fed won't want. So the Fed is going to go here for his 2. He'll have to turn up to stay within FA, so now is the Fed's best time to fire. The Gorn is about to get hit. So he's going to launch his shuttles. he will launch shuttles at speed 6. He's got 2 bays, so there's 2 shuttles there. So this is counter S1. It's the BC4. It's both bays. It's turn 2 and plus 20. It's a suicide. Seeking shuttle. Suicide. Now the Fed just knows that they're shuttles. He doesn't know that they're suicides. He can probably guess that they're suicides. And we get a bunch of fire happening. Now the Fed has already fired 9, 10, 5, and 6. So he'll fire 1 to 4, because they're forward half and they arc. He'll fire 7 and 8, because they're rear half. Sorry, I thought those were 360. I have to look at the sheet closer. So those don't arc. Actually, the numbering is off here, 7, 8, 7, 8. This should be labeled as 11 and 12. Let me just put the little 11 here and put a little 12 here. 7 and 8 is wrong here. It should be 11 and 12. Little mistake in the printing of the SSD. So 7 and 8 up here. So that's 6 phaser 1s. The Gorn is also retaliating at the same time, because he's figuring the Fed's going to fire. And he's going to lose phasers. So the Gorn plus 20, and that's got the Fed. The Gorn is firing at the Fed. Gorn target. Fed target. 2, 20. The Gorn will be firing 1, 2, 5, 6, and number 10. So 1, 2, 5, 6, 10, and number 8. The reason he's firing the 8 is because if he takes internals, that's a phaser he's going to want to absorb damage on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 phaser 1s from the Gorn. And a phaser 3. Okay, so phaser 3. At range 2, we'll do 3 damage. Six for the roll of a 1. Two 2s. Oh, sorry, that's range 3. Range 2 is 7, not 6. 2 2s is 12. And 2 3s is another 10. So that's going to be 6 inside. Does the Fed have batteries to reinforce? Well, we drained the batteries. Did we remember to recharge the batteries? No, we didn't have any power to recharge the batteries. So the Fed is taking 6 inside. Now the Gorn is also being hit with those phasers and those 4 photons. Now the photon rolls at range 2 are 1 to 5. Three hit. The Gorn has 12 reinforcement and 4 battery, so he'll drain the 4 battery. To mitigate 1 of the photon hits. So that means right off the bat he gets hit. With 32 from the 2 photons. It's a 30-point shield. So he's taking 2 inside so far. Now the other phasers, or 6 phaser 1s. This is where the Gorn gets hit hard. 6 phaser 1s at range 2 through a down shield. The Fed rolled crappy. Okay, so 2 is 6, 4 means 10, 5 is 4, 14 plus 9. That's 23, so that's 25 inside the Gorn. The Fed is taking 6. And this is where the damage allocation chart comes in. The underlined boxes only get hit once, and then you move to the next row. So you use 2d6, so between 2 and 12, and that's what gets damaged. So let's roll. Okay, yeah, so that's 6 inside on the Fed. Okay, so 6 forward hull, 5 right warp engine, 10 a phaser, 9 left warp engine, 3 is a drone, which the Gorn doesn't have, so that's another phaser, and a 7 is another hull. So let me bring up the Gorn. So it's a forward hull. That's a right warp engine. That's a 10 for a phaser. 9 is left warp engine. That's another phaser. Oops, I'm doing them on the wrong ship, sorry. I should be doing that damage internal to the Fed. Control Z, okay. So again, that was forward hull, right warp, phaser, left warp. 3 is a drone. The Feds do have drones. Seven forward hull. That's the Gorn that gets a 25. This is a set of 10. That's a 5 for a right warp. Seven for a forward hull. 7 again for another forward hull. 11 for torpedo. Six for forward hull. Five for an aft hull. Seven for a forward hull. That was 5 for an aft hull. 11 for a phaser. 7 for a forward hull. If there are no forward hull, it goes to center hull. That's 10. Five aft hull. 9, the left warp engine. 8 is an aft hull. 8 again is another aft hull. It's now all center hull hits. 10 is a phaser. 6 is a forward hull, which is just simply center. 5 is an aft hull for another center. 11 is an impulse engine hit. 6 is forward hull for another center. Another 11 is another impulse. And 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10 is a tractor. 6 forward hull. 6 again for another hull. 7, another hull. Hull is now gone. Another 11 for an impulse. Quite unusual to lose 3/4 of your impulses and engines in one hit like that. Fed rolled a lot of 11s. And we go back to movement. Next impulse, nothing moves. The Fed has nothing that arcs. Gorn has nothing that arcs. Next impulse, the Gorn moves. Oh, I forgot the Speed 6 shuttles. They also move. Next impulse, the Fed moves. Fed is moving 13. Fed has got turn mode of 4. The Fed can barely make the turn down here and run this way. But if he does that, he's then exposing these shields, the weak ones, to this direction from this side. If he turns this way, he's exposing his number 2 shield, guaranteeing an internal shot for the Gorn. If he goes forward, with his turn mode of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, he's unable to turn this way. If he goes forward 1, 2, 3, 4. He can turn this way if he wants. So going forward is probably the better choice. That locks him out of this. The Gorn is going to launch 2 more. Oh no, wait, the Gorn had 2 suicides. That's it. Okay. He has 2 weasels as well. I was thinking he had 4 for a moment there. Brain fart. Yeah, let's continue. Next impulse. Actually, hold. Next impulse, the oh yeah, that speed 8 drones will move. Sorry for a moment there, I thought it was shuttles. And the Gorn moves. Next impulse, the Fed moves. Next impulse, nothing. Next impulse, shuttles and Gorn. Next impulse, drones and Fed. Next impulse, nothing. Next impulse, Gorn. I just turned. And Fed. Now the Fed could go here. What weapons does he still have armed? He's got his rear half. Yeah, the 2 rear half ones are a good shot at range 1. So that's what he'll do. So that's the 11 and 12 phasers at the Gorn, which is BC4. This is 2 impulse 30. 3 and a 5 at range 1. For 9 on the Gorn. First impulse, nothing moves. Last impulse, everything moves. Alright, didn't have the map to the front. Gorn went forward because of the side slip. Fed went forward because he didn't want to stay within range 1, and he just side slipped. 1, 2, 3, yeah. And I think I moved the shuttle already. Yeah, it turned. Okay, so on this impulse, the Gorn is going to fire. It has 3 phaser 1s and a phaser 3 that can fire. This is at the Fed. Oops, hold that up a little bit. So it's at the Fed. It's 2, 32. It is 3, 4, 9, and 7. So 3 phaser 1s and a phaser 3. Okay, so the phaser 3 at range 2 did a 5, so that's 2 damage. And this is hitting the number 3 on the Fed. And then 2, a 4, and a 5 at range 2. 2 and a 4 is 10, 14. So the Fed is pretty shieldless at this point. The Gorn is in a good position shielding wise, except he's got a partially damaged shield facing the Fed on his energy allocation stage again. Well, at this point, the Gorn has taken internal damage. He's lost 2 warp, so he's only got 30 warp. He's lost 3 impulse, so he's only got 1 impulse, but he still has 2 APR, so that's 33 power available. He's got 0 batteries in that are charged. Life support, active fire control. He's fired every single phaser, so out of the 9 phasers, he's fired all 9. He's lost 1 plasma torpedo tube, which is tube D. Now he does have so 33 power, life support, active fire control, second turn of arming on the 2 S torps, second turn of arming on the F. This tube is destroyed. Shielding. The suicides are now gone. He does have 2 weasels. So it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 out of 33. 22 left. The Gorn is going to pay a couple points in the tractor. Got 20 left. He's going to charge all of his phasers. That's was going to be 9, but he's lost a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. So 7.5 on the recharge phasers. For transporters, we'll throw in the other half point. Actually, we'll throw that into battery, recharging batteries. 0.5. So we'll throw 3.5 into that. So where were we again? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Got 9 left. Let's go speed 4. And we get 5 reinforcement, which we are going to want to throw on the number 5. But instead, let's put 6 of that power on the tractor and put 1 on the number 5. So we powered up a tractor beam with 6 points. Now let's see what the Fed's going to do. And well, the Fed fired all of its photons. So it's going to be 16 points to start fully arming overloads. The Fed fired on turn 2. So we look at the Fed firing. It fired 1, 2. Well, here, let's do this way. It fired 9 and 10. It fired 5 and 6. It fired 1 through 4, 7 and 8, and 11 and 12. So the Fed fired every phaser it had. So it has 10.5 that it can charge up in phasers. And we'll throw in the 0.5 into the battery. So that'll count for 11. Now, did the Fed lose power? Fed lost left and a right warp engine, so he's down to 30 warp. The Fed did not lose any impulse or AWR. So he's down to, oops, wrong line. It's the same. It's 30 here on the third turn. So he's down to 36. And he's just used 11 of that. So he's got 25 left. I support active fire control and shields. That's another 4 off of that. So he's got 21 left. The 4 photons is 16, so he's got 5 left. With 5 power left, he's going to keep his 2 weasels, but he's going to drop his shuttles. That means he's got 3 left. Let's see. If he doesn't move and go speed 0, he can tack and put his number 4 towards him. So he can use an impulse tack and a warp tack and another tack, so that's 3 left. So that's what he'll do for movement. So that's 3, and that's going to be warp, warp, and an impulse. We can also write that in special notes over here if we wanted to. So he fired every single one of his phasers. So there was 0 armed at the beginning of this turn. That's the way I should have been using this line. I should have been doing 11, and then 9 fired. 2 left, so 2 there. Plus the 9 here was 11. We fired off all 11. 0 starting whenever we fire this turn. Now we do have 5 batteries that are empty, except for the half point that we just put in. Now, do we want to fire or arm 4 overloads? No, we're short on power, so let's turn these into 2s. That'll give us 8 power. Well, we don't want to do that. We'll do 2 and 2. So 2 of these are 2 pointers and 2 of these are 4 pointers. That gives us 4 power, which we are going to throw into. That was the wrong line. That's over here. So we're going to put 4.5 into the battery. So we got 36 available. And 36 has been allocated. And we're going speed 0 on the Fed. So the Fed is 0. We still got speed 6 shuttles. The Gorn is going speed 4. And we still have speed 8 drones on the board. Now the Gorn fired off his left side phasers 3, 4, 9, and 7 on the 32nd, so they're not able to fire until the 8th. And then he fired on the 20th is 1, 2, 5, 6, 10, and 8 is right side ones. So with the fed off the number 5 right now, the Gorn has one phaser 1, which is armed and able to arc at the Fed. Now, continuous free damage repairs, the Gorn is going to fix an impulse engine. That'll get fixed at the end of this turn. And the Fed will start fixing a left warp engine as an AWR. That will not be fixed at the end of this turn, but it'll be fixed at the end of next turn. He'll also fix a phaser 3 as a phaser 3. So that'll be 2 points to the warp, 2 points to the phaser 3. Okay, so first impulse. Nothing moves. Now the Gorn did put 3.5 in the battery. He's on the second turn of arming of one of his S-torps, both of his S-torps actually. He can drain 2 battery and launch that S-torp as an F-torp. It's called a fast-loaded F-torp, or an accelerated armed F-torp. The Gorn is going to do that. So this is turn 3. Impulse 1. It's launching a real accelerated F-torp. Target is the Fed ship, CA3. Warhead strength is 20. Counter is counter 6. Launching unit is the Gorn, GRN. And the tube is A tube, if I'm remembering my tubes correctly. Yep, A tube. That can be launched directly forward, this direction, or this direction. So that's the direction it's going to arm it in, or launch it in. So on the second impulse, nothing moves except for the plasma. Now the Fed's got a choice. The Fed has fired only 2 of his phasers in the last 8. The number 11 and 12, the rear half ones. That means he's got his 2 phasers on this side, his 4 in the center, and 2 on the right available. These 2 and those 4 they could fire into this F-torp. But if he does that, they're not going to be available for the Gorn. Now, since he didn't fire them at the Gorn on the first impulse, because of the plasma launch, he was obviously holding them for the plasma. Now the Fed has got really weak shields. If he tacks now, he can put his number 4 towards the Gorn, and they'll be hitting his number 4 shield. And then he can tack back later to shoot the Gorn with phasers. Or, if we look at his energy allocation form, he still has 2 wild weasels available. Since the speeds are low all the way around, that's what he's going to do. So the Fed is going to drop his active fire control and start raising it again after the Weasel's destroyed. And he's going to launch a wild weasel. He's going to launch it in the direction off of his number 4 shield. The plasma is now targeting the Fed. The Fed has dropped his active fire control. These 2 drones drop off the board. So there's Wild Weasel speed 6 on the board. Next impulse, the plasma hits the Wild Weasel, destroys the Weasel, but it's still in the same hex as the Fed ship, and it takes collateral damage. There is a chart for collateral damage. Here's section J. So it's a 20-point warhead, so it's 5 points of damage. So 5 points to the Fed's rear shield. Does the Fed want to use reinforcement on that? No. Okay, so the Fed's just taken damage from the explosion of the plasma wild weasel. It is now starting to bring its active fire control back up. It'll take 4 impulses for that to happen. So on the 7th impulse, he'll be able to fire phasers again. Okay, so next impulse, speed 8 drones would have moved, but they're no longer on the board. 5th impulse, nothing moves. 6th impulse, the 2 suicide shuttles move. 7th impulse, nothing moves. Fed's phasers are up. On this impulse, the Fed has all of its phasers available to fire, and that's what they're going to do. At least those that arc. So, at the Gorn, on turn 3, the Fed is going to fire phaser 7, 8, 11, and 12, and his phaser 3, number 9. Phaser 3, range 2. That's 4 damage. Now I'm holding back the batteries. There is reinforcement of 1 there, so I'll take off that one last hit for that. And there are 4 phaser 1s firing as well. So here are the 4 phaser 1s. 2, 3, 3, 6 at range 2. 2, 3, 3 is 16, 17, 18, 19. So the Gorn's going to be taking 7 inside, unless he has any more reinforcement. Now he did have 3.5 battery. He's used 2, there's 1 there. So he's going to use 1 more battery to reinforce. So that's going to be 6 inside. Five is a right warp engine. The decision to kill an F-torp or to kill an S-torp. Well, we'll kill the S-torp that was just launched. Ten is a phaser. Kill the number 7. 7 is cargo forward hull battery. Well, it's an empty battery now, so kill the battery. 9, left warp engine. And 5, atoll cargo battery. Next impulse, the speed 4 Gorn moves. Turn mode for the Gorn. And speed 4 is a turn mode of 1. Now on this impulse, the Fed will perform a warp attack. Now this does bring down number 6 shield towards the Gorn. If he does this. But it also brings to bear 4 phaser 1s that can shoot through the Gorn's down number 5 shield. Whereas the Gorn has 2 phaser 1s. Sorry, 4 phaser 1s, which can fire back. So the Fed wouldn't want to do that. Actually, the Fed doesn't have to attack at all. He's got forward half phasers. So these 4 can arc because it's front half and it's a shield line. So the next moving target, or sorry, the next ship to move determines the shield facing. And since the Fed is 0 and the Gorn is moving, it's going to be shooting the number 5. So the Fed's going to fire 4 phaser 1s. That's phasers 1 through 4 at the Gorn. 3, 8. 1, 2, 3, and a 5. One and 2 is 13. 3 is 18. That's 22 more internal to the Gorn. Okay, 7 is a battery. The Gorn would be returning fire, of course, because similarly the Gorn is firing on the Fed's down number 2, and the Gorn would be returning fire with 1, 2, 3, 4 phaser 1s. We'll do that in a minute. As I was saying, a phaser hit for the Gorn. Seven, a battery hit. 6 is an impulse hit. 4 is a phaser hit. 7 is a lab hit. 6 is a lab hit. 7 is cargo forward, battery, center warp engine, is a shuttle hit. 7 is another shuttle hit. I just realized the Gorn's got 6 shuttles, not 4 like I was thinking he did. 6 is a lab hit. 8 and 7. 7 is a lab hit. 8 is AFSOL APR. Last set of 10. Seven is a shuttle hit. That'll be one of the Weasels. 5 is a right warp engine hit. 10 is a phaser hit. 10 again is a tractor hit. 6, forward hull impulse, lab, con, left warp engine hit. 6 is left warp engine hit. 3 is a phaser hit. 7 is a shuttle hit. That'll be the other weasel. 5 is an aft hull cargo battery shuttle hit. It's one of the admins. 3 is left warp engine hit. Okay, and the 4 phaser ones that are coming back at the Fed from the number 1, 9, 3, and 4. One, 1, 2, and a 4. So that's 14. Plus a 6 is 20. 24. Through the Fed's number 2 shield. Because the Fed didn't attack, it chose to fire. All is Oxcon. Nine is left warp. 11 is a torpedo. It's going to kill one of the one of the two pointers, not one of the 4 pointers. 11 is a phaser. 5 is a right warp engine. 4 is a phaser. These have to be one of the ones up here. 3 is a drone. 6 is forward hull. That was the first 10. Let's do the last 4 and then 10 after that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 10 is another phaser. 9 is a forward hull. 3 is another phaser. 7 is for cargo forward hull. And then the 10. That was an 11 for a tractor. 9 forward hull. 11 for an impulse. 2 for a bridge. 8 for an aft hull. 12 for an emergency bridge. 10 for a left warp engine. and 3 for a transporter. Next impulse, nothing moves. Impulse after that, nothing moves. Impulse after that, speed 6 shuttles move. Impulse after that, nothing. Impulse after that, nothing. Impulse after that, nothing. 15th impulse, nothing. 16th impulse, speed 4 Gorn. We'll turn in towards the Fed. And speed 6 shuttles. The Gorn, realizing that it had another shuttle, no, it's the last one was Weasel. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I kept the Weasel and killed the admins. Okay. Let's see. This is the number 2 on the Fed. Does the Fed wish to tack? Yes. The Fed will tack. That will be another warp. That means there's an impulse left. The Fed only has 2 phaser 1s, the fire forward, and 2 phaser 1s that fire to the rear. Base hitting a perfectly good up shield on the Gorn. Should hold that. The Fed knows the Gorn's got 1 more shuttle. He wouldn't know if it's a suicide or an admin. So he would hold the fire there. There are 2 shuttles behind the Fed. So the Fed would either fire 1 phaser 1 at each and hope for a kill, and it would, or at range 1 that's only on a roll of 1 or 2, or fire 2 phaser 1s as a phaser 3 at range 1, which would be a guaranteed kill. Or fire 1 phaser 1, roll for the damage, and then possibly fire the other one as a phaser 3, which is probably what he would do. The Gorn at this point has 1 phaser 1 firing directly off of the number 1 shield of the Fed, and that's what the Gorn will fire. So the Gorn will fire phaser number 2 at the Fed on 316, and the Fed will fire phaser number 8 as a phaser 1 at the Gorn shuttle, 316. So here's the shuttle shot, phaser 1. That's a 4. Range 1 is 4 damage. So it's a speed 3 shuttle. And the 1 phaser 1 at the Fed is a 6. Range 1 is 4. Takes out the 2 shields, does 2 internals. 5 right warp engine, 10 phaser. Next impulse, the Fed will fire his remaining phaser, number 7, at the Gorn shuttle, the damaged one. That's an automatic kill. He'll fire it as a phaser 3. Means there's a half point left for the phaser capacitor on the Fed. Next impulse, nothing moves. Next impulse, nothing moves. Next impulse, nothing moves. Next impulse, the 21st, nothing moves. Impulse after that, which is the 22nd, the speed 6 shuttle will move. The Fed had nothing left to fire at it. It's a suicide shuttle. It hits for 18. Twenty-third impulse, nothing moves. 24th impulse, the speed 4 Gorn moves. The Gorn turns. It's the number 1 Gorn shield. Facing the number 1 Fed shield. The Fed has the ability to do one more attack. So instead of taking damage through the number 1, it will attack. The last movement it can do to bring the number 6 shield to bear. Next impulse, nothing. Impulse after that, nothing. Impulse 27, speed 6s move. 6s are no longer on the board. On the last impulse, the Gorn moves. Let's see what shields are like on the Fed. Well, Gorn is going to side slip off the Fed's number 6, which is down. Now the Gorn has phasers 5 and 6, which are armed and have not fired. So 2 phaser 1s, range 1, at the Fed through a down shield. Two and a 3. 2 and a 3, range 1. 12. So 12 internal. So here's 2 out of the 10. 7 and 8. 7 is a forward hull. 8 is an aft hull. Four is a phaser, must be able to shoot at the 6, or sorry, the number 2 shield. Yeah. 6 is a forward hull. 5, right warp engine. 8, forward hull. 11, photon torpedo. The other 2-pointer. Eleven is a phaser. 9, left warp engine. 9, forward hull. 10, phaser. None can get hit. Tractor beam instead. 6, forward hull. The Fed was able to fix a phaser 3. And the Gorn was able to fix an impulse engine. Okay, now the Gorn, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, is down 8 warp, so he's got 24 warp. He now has 1 impulse and 1 APR for 26 power total. He has lost the A tube and he has lost the D tube. The Gorn is arming and enveloping plasma torpedo. Life support, active fire control, shields, 1 wild weasel that's left, and he's got half a point still left in battery, or did he lose all his batteries? He lost all his batteries. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I've got 10 power left. Gonna go speed 4. 6 power left. How many phasers do I got? 1, 2, 3. Arm all 3. And throw 3 into negative tractor. Or 3 into tractor, period. It can be used as either positive or negative. The energy allocation for the Fed. Let's see what he's got. He's got 22 warp left. Sorry, he's got 24 warp left. He's got 3 impulse and 2 AVR. He's got 29 power. He's got half a point left in his phaser capacitor. Every other phaser, except for 5 and 6. I'll verify that. Every phaser except 5 and 6 is fired. So he's got 2.5 left in the capacitor. And he put 10.5 in there. So all the phasers that he has are armed. Except for 7 and 8. So let's put 2 points into that. Life support, active fire control, shields. Does he want to pay for shields? Well, if he doesn't pay for shields, he's got none. He does still have some shielding. Those 2 torpedo tubes are destroyed. He's used 1 wild weasel. Does he have enough power to keep the other one armed? Let's take a look and see. He fully arms these. It's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 out of 29. The Gorn is off of his down shield number 2. And has at least 1 phaser 1 that he can probably fire. Let's take a look. Number 2 is fired on the 16th. Yeah. So, in order to stop taking internal screw down shield. The Fed's going to want to put a lot into general reinforcement to cover a down shield. He'll put 4 into movement, or attacking. Let's see, he'll do 3 again. Same thing. He's got 11 left, so it's 10 into general for 5 reinforcement. So that's 3 warp, 1 impulse. So that's 3 and 1. Okay, so let's see how this plays out. The Fed's got photons, which arm on the Gorn. So the Gorn has got a 24 shield facing him. But he also got a Weasel, and the Gorn is going speed 4. So on movement, tractor stage. The Fed doesn't want the Gorn to Weasel, so he'll try and tractor. Does he have tractor power allocated? No, completely forgot about it. So the Gorn launches a Wild Weasel. The Gorn is going to face this off of his number 6 shield. Traveling speed 6, the fastest thing on the map. But that's on launch of shuttle stage. There is actually a launch of plasma and drones before shuttles. So let's see. The Gorn paid for tractor. It has no tractor beams, but negative tractor doesn't require a tractor beam. Oh, by the way, the Gorn is going to be continuous damage repairing another impulse this turn. The Fed is going to finish doing that warp engine as AWR. So let's see. So the Gorn can't tractor the Fed, so the Gorn's simply going to Weasel. Now the Fed, for weapons, has 2 phaser 1s which don't arc. He's got 2 phaser 1s rear half which don't arc. But he does have 2 photons to fire. But he doesn't want to fire 2 photons into a Wild Weasel shift. He's got rolls of 1 to 6, but with the Wild Weasel shift, it's 1 to 4. So no actions from the Fed on the first impulse. Second impulse, the Fed is going to tack. He wants to bring his 5 and 6 phaser 1s and his 7-8 to bear. And he wants a good shield to be facing him, so he's gonna warp tack. Next impulse, he will then impulse tack. He's got a 1-point up shield facing the Gorn, who's under a Weasel, but now he's got his 5 and 6 phasers, which can fire at the number 5, closer being able to fire, and his 7 and 8 phasers can fire. So that's a speed 6 shuttle. He's going to fire 1 phaser 1 at the shuttle and see how much damage it does. This will be turn 4. Impulse 2. This will be number 8 at the shuttle, Weasel. Oh, you don't see that. That's a 5 roll. And a 5 roll is 4 damage, even for a phaser 1. So it's now a speed 3 shuttle. Next impulse, nothing moves. The Fed will fire again. The other phaser 1, the repaired phaser 3 as a phaser 3, and it will automatically kill the shuttle. the Gorn starts to raise his active fire control, it'll be up on the 7th. However, now that his Weasel has been voided and destroyed, there's nothing stopping the Gorn from firing. The Gorn, since he's got no active fire control, doubles the range, but range 1 doubles range 2, it's not that bad. But he does have 3 phaser 1s, which are currently facing at number 4 shield of a Fed, because next impulse the Fed's going to attack, or try to. Actually, he has to wait until the 8th impulse before he can attack again. So, with 3 phaser 1s, and he's covered by the Wild Weasel explosion, it's going to take the Fed by surprise and fire those 3 phaser 1s, that's 2, 5, and 6, at the Fed on impulse 3. At range 2. With very good rolls. Now it is rather unfortunate the Fed fired so quickly to destroy the Weasel. He actually should have waited until about the 7th impulse, or the 8th impulse even, to fire. That was a tactical mistake. So at range 2, that's 7, and a 6 for 13, and a 4 is 15. So that's 14 inside on the Fed. Here's the roll of the 4. Okay, this is a 6. That's a forward halt. It's a 5, that's a right warp engine. It's a 7, that's a forward hull. The Fed has none. It's an impulse hit. And then a 7, cargo forward battery. And then the 10. Four is a phaser. Kill the phaser 3 that's already fired. 7 is a battery. 9 is a left warp. 10 is a phaser. 3 is a phaser. 10 is a tractor. Tractors are gone. Left warp engine. 6 impulse. 3 impulse. 5 aft hull. 8 aft hull. So no shuttle hits and no torpedo hits. Boo-hoo for the Gorn. Okay, so the next impulse, nothing. Impulse after that, nothing. Impulse after that, nothing. 8th impulse. The Gorn moves. His active fire control. Sorry. Seventh impulse's active fire control is up. That's when the Fed would fire his 2 photons. But they're not facing. Eighth impulse. The Fed tacks. And the Gorn moves. And believe it or not, I completely forgot about the photons being FA, and I completely forgot about the facing and the arcing of them for the tacking. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, Gorn will slip. For the next 7 impulses, nothing happens. And then the Fed will attack. And the Gorn will move. On this impulse, the Fed will fire his 2 overloaded photons and his 2 phaser 1s. The whites are the phaser 1s. That's a range of 3 shot for the Fed, unfortunately. Phaser 1s are white. That was a 3. So both photons hit, and the phasers hit. At range of 3. At 1 to 4 rolls. So that's 32. And 9 is 41. And 41 on the Fed. Sorry, 41 inside on the Gorn. Sorry, 41 on the shield of the Gorn is it's going to be 17 inside for the Gorn. Does the Gorn have any reinforcement on his number 3? No. Does the Gorn have batteries? Batteries are blown off. So 17 inside on the Gorn. This is going to hurt. Okay, here's the 7. Four is a phaser. Three is a phaser. Two is a bridge. 6 is an impulse. 3 is a phaser, shooting through the number 3. Yep. 6 is an impulse, there are none. A lab, there are none. Left warp engine. 9, left warp engine. And then the full 10. Three is an impulse, can't get hit, left warp. 9 is a left warp. 7 is a empty shuttle bay. 8 is a right warp engine. Right warp engine. Shuttle APR. Right warp engine. Right warp engine. Left warp engine. Transporter. That's all the movements that the Fed can do. The Fed has fired off all of its weapons. The Gorn has armed an F-torp and an S-torp. The shield facing the Gorn is the number 1 and the number 6. Okay, on the 17th through 23rd, nothing happens. The Fed is out of tax. The Gorn will move once on the 24th, and then once on the 32nd, which only gives him 2 moves. So he cannot maneuver both the F-torp and the S-torp at the Fed. So his best maneuver is to fire his enveloped S-torp now. And the Fed will retaliate with a wild weasel. And the Fed will put this off of his number 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll hit before the shuttle has a chance to move, which will do collateral damage to the number 5. 30-point warhead will do 6 damage. And then the Gorn waits for the Weasel to go away. And turns. The Weasel's gone. This is the 24th impulse. And it will launch an F-torp. It's going to be real. It's launching on the 24th. So 424 F at the Fed. Real. The first movement on the 25th, it must move forward. Seeking weapons cannot be forced to HET. Next impulse, it turns. 27th impulse, it turns. 28th impulse, it moves. 29th impulse, it moves. 30th impulse, it hits. So it's a 15-point warhead, hitting the number 5 shield. So that's 10 inside on the Fed. Gorn would have preferred to have launched the F-torp to pull out the Weasel, and then launched the big S-torp, but it just didn't work out that way. Oh, wait a minute, that wasn't a 30. That was a 60-point warhead. It was an enveloper. So that wouldn't have done 6 damage to that shield. That would have actually done 60 would have done 8. So it's 3 more damage. So that's 13 inside. So let's roll the 3 first. Here's the 3. 5, 11, 10. 5 is a right warp engine. 11 is a photon. 10 is a phaser. And then the set of 10. Seven is cargo, forward hull, battery. 9 is left warp engine. 5 is right warp engine. 8 is aft hull APR. 7 is forward hull battery. 9 is cargo forward hull battery. Battery's now gone. Whoops, that's a 5. Aft hull cargo battery shuttle. 6 forward hull impulse lab. 3 is a phaser. 9 lab. And then on the last impulse, the Gorn moves. Gorn has no phasers, but he does have a rear shield. The Fed, the Gorn will be fixing that warp engine, that impulse engine. The Fed fixes the warp engine as an AWR, so I'm just going to fix the AWR box. That was actually the warp engine it was fixing as AWR. And what does the Fed have for weapons? The Federation has no phasers, but he has 1 photon. The Gorn has no phasers, he has 2 plasmas. So at this point, the Fed and the Gorn can both try doing emergency damage repairs with labs for power. At least the Fed can. But in 2 turns, the Gorn is going to have a fast-loaded S as an F, and then the turn after that another F. Whereas the Fed has got 1 photon. The Fed has got no shields. The Gorn has still got 3 good fighting shields. The Fed really only has 1 shield. So I think the Gorn is going to take this. It'll take about another 2 or 3, 4 turns of not much happening, just flying around and fixing shields. But let's see, we got 3, 6, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 power, 20 power, I think, on the Fed, and 16 power on the Gorn. The Gorn's going to be opening up space. I don't think either ship has to pay for life support anymore. But I would say this one's going to go to the Gorn. By a hair. By a nose. So, that was a quick demonstration game of me playing against myself. And I hope it was informative for you. As a quick how to play Starfleet battles. We didn't really get into how to do emergency damage repair or continuous damage repair. That's stuff we can get into later. I did briefly do a couple repairs. Phaser 3, an AWR, and a couple of impulse engines. There's actually a chart that lists all the systems and the points that they cost. And each ship has a damage control rating of 4. So they have 4 points of continuous repair that they use for free for fixing things inside, but they can only fix 4 things total by doing that. So the Fed has used one for an AWR and one for Phaser 3, and the Gorn has used 2 for impulse engines. That means there's 2 fixes left that the Gorn can do. He would probably fix Phaser 1s as Phaser 1s, whereas the Fed would probably start fixing, probably 2 Phaser 1s as Phaser 1s, or possibly Phaser 1s as Phaser 2s. So those will both come back online for both of them pretty much at the same time, but again, the Gorn's got better shields. The Fed will probably shoot at up shields, where the Gorn's probably going to be getting a down shield when he shoots. Plus he's got the plasmas that'll eventually come online, where the Fed has got to get within range 8 for that photon shot, and the Gorn doesn't have to get close anymore. Of course, if I was paying a little bit more attention, the Gorn would have launched 2 of those gas shuttles as administrative shuttles. They each have a Phaser 3 360, as all shuttles do. But the Gorn gas shuttles take 8 to kill instead of 6. And in that corner fight there, 2 Phaser 3s flying around when the Fed was short on phasers could have made a bit of a difference for scoring a few internals more here and there. I did mess up on the tacking on the Fed a little bit, but I compensated it for it. It would have really hurt if one of those 2 photons had missed, but they both hit, and the phasers rolled fairly well, so the longer range didn't really hurt too much. I might have lost a point or 2 of damage from the phasers, so even though I screwed up, not too badly. Although I did miss this little note about it being able to fire those phasers directly backwards. I can't remember if that would have made a difference anywhere. No, I think I would have let the shuttle hit the shield and kept them for firing at the ship as we did. So yeah, that's the end of it. That's the Fed versus Gorn. How to learn how to play SFB. Hope you enjoyed it.